unique way of life. I'll never see such a way of life again. It's sad that economics has been the main cause of this, and in a way I think it may turn out to be false economics in the long run.
It's inevitable, just progress, what they call it. I don't think it's going to be any better. I don't think it's going to be any cheaper. It's nearly like you go down to the brew and get a job as a lightkeeper. It'll never come back again, like the lamplighter and other things that's gone before.
When I came into the job in 67 there, you said, well, you're going to be here till you're 60, 65, you know. But, 55, we're going out. Am I going to get a job then? I don't know.
Things have to change, and they're continually changing, and it would appear that the human presence is no longer required in the lighthouse service. I certainly reflect in all the years that my family have been involved in the lighthouse service, and I suppose, yeah, pride. Sadness too, of course, though.
30 years ago, I dare say, had I known that the job was not going to last my working life, I might have considered something else.
I feel very sorry about it. It was a way of life which is gone forever.
There was 83 lighthouses when I joined, and they were slowly going down then, the demand. So it has been going on all that time and didn't realise it. It's caught up with us now.
I'm James Taylor, and for the last 4 years or so, I've been the Chief Executive of the Northern Lighthouse Board, based at the headquarters building here in George Street in Edinburgh. I know very well, because I visit lighthouses, that I am no longer greeted by the look in the eye, the firm handshake and the smell of coffee. You're going into a machine rather than a place where people live and work. My way of looking at it is it's rather like the engine driver on the steam train. And for those of us of a certain age, we stood by the side of the track and watched the steam train go past and said, wasn't it glorious, wasn't it romantic? The reality is there was someone working damned hard on the footplate, sweaty, dirty, and doing a very difficult and occasionally dangerous job. And I think lightkeeping is very like that. Sending people out to spend a month at a time on a wind-tossed rock in the north of Scotland, it's not for everybody.
We're standing in the light room, the lighthouse at Cape Wrath. We're looking out and we see the Atlantic on one side, Pentland Firth on the other. My name's Kenny Weir, and I'm up here with Alan Tulloch, the other assistant keeper.
At Cape Wrath here, we're actually in the western entrance to the Pentland Firth, a wild stretch of water. In fact, one of the wildest stretches of water in the world, really. A tide race of about 12 knots here. They say about running a cost-effective service, but at what cost? They demand the island of Stroma, where I was stationed. And in the last few weeks, one afternoon I was on watch and the phone went. And here was a skipper of a fishing boat from the east coast. He was going to leave the home port around midnight, and he was going to come through the Firth on his way to the west coast fishing grounds, and he wanted to know what the weather was like. So I was able to give him a detailed description: wind, strength, visibility, the usual stuff, and most important, sea conditions. I says, well, you won't be able to in a fortnight's time to do this. And he said, what do you mean? I says, there's going to be nobody here. Oh, why? Well, I says, well, demand, automation. Oh, he says, a lot of people think that must be lonely people. Well, it couldn't be far from the truth, because I've never experienced loneliness at all. I bet you there's far more lonely people in the heart of London than there is out here, stuck out at Cape Wrath, where we see nobody for weeks on end.
You come and go as you want, and there's a freedom to the job. I've seen a lot of Scotland. I've been, I think, for the top of Flugga and the top of the Shetlands to Cafferman, over on the west coast, Barrahead, the east coast, and the Bass Rock. I've just been all over the place. Things I would never have seen if I'd been in Aberdeen. You think back and with rose-coloured specs, but sometimes the near disasters, even this last time we come out in the helicopter, we got a hell of a battering coming out, and it was quite a white-knuckle ride. And when me and Callum come off, we both agreed we were genuinely scared. If you go back over the years, I've seen myself tying myself to a mast coming off a bar ahead because there wasn't room in the wheelhouse for another keeper. But after 3 or 4 waves, I made sure there was room.
I was born at St Abb's Head Lighthouse on the 2nd of May in 1910. My father was one of the keepers at St Abb's Head, of course, and from there we were transferred to Glass Island Lighthouse in the Outer Hebrides. I was the longest serving employee of the Northern Lighthouse Board. My name is Archie McEachran. It was the only life that I could follow. I had an ambition to go to sea, and I spent 4 years on one of the Northern Lighthouse Board tenders, but I always wanted to become a lighthouse keeper. I was transferred from Fair Isle North, which had been my first station, to Johertach, a rock station lying 20 miles southwest of Mull and 40 miles from Oban. That was quite something, because I hadn't realised exactly how wild the seas could be during the winter time, especially when the waves rolled in and hit the base of the tower and the whole edifice shook. So much so that if you were in your bunk, the shock of the wave hitting the tower used to waken you up, and it took some getting used to, but after about 2 to 3 years we were quite used to it, and we used to waken up when the wave stopped. 3 keepers were in the tower all the time. You had nowhere to go except up or down. Occasionally we could get walking on the rock in the summertime, but not very often in the winter time, because the seas swept over the rock at high water.
My name's Norrie Muir, and I was in the lighthouse service for 33 years. I worked in the monitoring station for a short time, and I put up the Flannan Islands. That was the one I was there in 1962, and I could tell on the computer what the motors were doing, what the light was doing, how it was running. When I turned up at the Flannans, there was no electricity, no fridges, nothing as we know it, tilly lamps, and we had to light the light with paraffin, and we had to wind the light up every 25 minutes during the night to make sure that the lens revolved. There was no heating in the light room, so you were there for 3 hours at a trot, and in the winter, 18 miles into the Atlantic, it could be rather cold to say the least. We spoke to the Butt of Lewis twice a day with a radio, just to let the mainland know that we were still there. The food, that was the biggest shock of all. We got our victualling once every month. So you had to have your bread and everything taken out that month, and you didn't see the ship for a month. So you were allowed 3 slices of bread a day. So if you had 2 slices for your breakfast, you were only allowed 1 for your tea. If you didn't get this paraffin fridge working within the first day, your meat and everything started getting a bit hairy, to say the least, and we had to wash it in vinegar, plenty curry powder to cover it. In fact, one day we were so desperate, one man made corned beef soup. I've never had it since, and I don't want to.
Go Plima Bravo, Stromness. Our uplift for Fair Isle is 398 kilograms. Over.
Mr. Dispatch, Aberdeen Western should be with you at 10 past.
Well, that's me arrived on Fair Isle now, just come off the helicopter, and that's me settling in for my month's trip. Get this provisions loaded onto the Land Rover now, and my month's duty begins.
Fair Isle has 2 lighthouses, one at the north end, one at the south end. My name is Angus Hutchison. I'm principal keeper at the South Light, which eventually will become the last manned lighthouse to be automated in Scotland. With me is my assistant Bill Galt.
Fair Isle is certainly for me the most comfortable station I've ever been on, with very nice living accommodation. It's a pity it has to be the last one, but that's how it is.
What I do remember with great affection is all the good mates, the friendships, and everything else that I've had over 35 years. That's what I will miss most, is the camaraderie that existed in the Lighthouse service. I think the one thing that sets Lightkeepers apart from everybody else that I ever come across is their ability to be able to accept what they can see as a fault in a human being and forgive it and get on with the day-to-day living. And I have seen certainly disagreements, but nothing more than that. Men were prepared to put their disagreements behind them, and they had to get on with life, because when you're isolated someplace like Salisbury, 35 miles west of Orkney, and you're out there for 6 weeks, you couldn't afford to have people at each other's throats. You know, the issue had to be settled, and life had to be got on with.
My name's Ian Castles. For 15 years I was a lighthouse keeper in the service. I'm standing here now outside Holborn Head Lighthouse, looking across the expanse of Thurso Bay at Dunnet Head Lighthouse and over the Pentland Firth Lighthouses. For the best part of 5 years I lived here at Holborn. I'm not a keeper here, I was a keeper on Stormer Lighthouse. This is our shore accommodation. It's quite a quiet day today. You can just hear that faint hush of the sea. But they still flicker here even though they're demanned stations. It's a good job if you wanted to have time to think at times. You could say that. If you want to be individualistic, because you were part of a team, but a very small team, and each one of you had to complement the other people that you were with. Say an engine broke down, you couldn't call out for an engineer in the middle of nowhere. You had to deal with it yourself, so you had to be practical as well. There's some very hidden talents in the lighthouse service, some excellent artists. A lot of people were very keen on woodwork. That became very popular. I remember on the Muckle Flogger, a keeper that worked was Davy MacDonald, and Davy made a beautiful coffee table out of wood. Unfortunately, this was wood that was specially reserved from lighthouses from long, long ago for a coffin if one of the keepers should drop dead.
We are standing in the light room here at Mullikintyre Lighthouse. In the background you can hear the machine revolving and the lens revolving. This lighthouse was demanned in the 31st of March 1996 when I was retired early. And I've taken up now the job of attendant here at the Mullikintyre. My name is Hector Lamont. On your day coming down to do your tests, and you see the overgrown gardens which you've kept yourself, you know, and you see it's a place not being kept to the same standard we used to keep it when the keepers were on it. Visitors used to come down here to visit the station. One lady got such a fright that she fainted, and you know, she was driving and she hit the barriers up there. But, it takes your breath away when you're coming down the first time. It goes from 200 feet to 1,000 feet in a mile. Very, very windy, horseshoe corners, goosenecks, whatever you like to call them. Oh, I always wanted to be a lightkeeper. My father had been in it, and my grandfather had been in it. My two brothers were also in it. I couldn't have done the job without the backing of my wife, Esther.
Many a time he would disappear, even from the early morning when he was down at the lighthouse here. He would go out and he would come in at lunchtime and then away back out again, and then in for tea, and then in the summer months he'd be out pottering about in the garden. Sometimes I would say to him, "Well, I put your pyjamas, take your pyjamas outside so you could sleep in the garden."
At places, the shore stations, you're there with your wife and your family. In olden times, you got a shift every 3 to 5 years, so you're just making friends. Your kids maybe starting school, got friends at school, then you have to up and away to another part of the country, total strangers, going from a wee village to a big city, vice versa. It's very upsetting. For instance, I was at Norse for 4 years. We were delighted with it. And then we got a phone call, 2 weeks, you're gone to Edinburgh. I didn't know when to go. You're gone, and that's it. I've spent a lot of time on the rocks and I think over the years, and I missed a lot of the main family growing up. When you first went abroad, they used to shout, "Oh, Daddy's going away," and they were greeting. Then after a while, when you come home, they said, "Mum, he's back again."
If you were at a shore station and the vans came round with the vegetables and groceries, you had to let the principal's wife into the van first. Even if you waited quarter of an hour, you couldn't go into that van. It was just an unwritten law. Same with the wash house. Principal's wife, Monday and Tuesday. First assistant's wife, Wednesday and Thursday. Third was Friday and Saturday. I got talking to this lady in the office when I went to St Abbs, Edith, and eventually married her.
I was a telephonist in George Street. A few weeks after starting in the Lighthouse Board, he phoned from St Abbs and he started chatting, how was I getting on and such like. They were very good in the office about it, and they all liked Norrie, and they encouraged it actually for us to speak. I knew he was very nice. He had a super nature, he really did. He invited me to lunch one day. He was on leave and he came down to Edinburgh. I was a nervous wreck. Of course, I didn't know what he looked like, and we didn't meet in the office. I thought, oh no, can't do that, So he waited further along George Street. And this went on for quite some time. Just, now and again, And then one time he said, I'm getting sick fed up of this. And I thought, here goes. He doesn't want to speak to me anymore. He said, I think we should just get married. And of course I was shocked. I thought, So I said, yes, of course. Been happy ever after.
This signal here is quite noisy and difficult to sleep through. The old type horn sirens that we used to have before, where you had a low pressure system and the old horn was much easier to live with, provided it wasn't just too close to the house. I stayed on the island of Bressay in Shetland. The fog signal there was only a matter of maybe 10 metres from the living room, and the sound was measured at the front door of 116 decibels of noise. You ended up thoroughly exhausted by the time the bad weather had cleared.
As a supernumerary keeper, I was on Fair Isle, and there was great sport and rivalry between the Northern Lighthouse and the Southern Lighthouse. Angus Hutchinson, I think, was the principal at the time out at the North Lights, and Norrie Muir at the South Lights. The North Lights, the venue used to be darts normally, and you played up there for a game of darts, and that was the first leg. And at the South Light, they got a bit more adventurous, and they built their own mini golf course.
I tried to get flat bits of ground, and I patted them down. You had to be very precise. You had to get near the flag, because the putting surface wasn't very good at all. I used to go round with shears, and you only had maybe 2 or 3 feet of a decent putting bit. Fruit tins, steam pudding tins, we used to put that round the hole, and that used to rust. So we had to keep eating steam pudding tins to keep the course going. And the broom handles came for the superintendent, so they must have wondered why I must have been doing a lot of sweeping in Fair Isle. It was all right until somebody, I think it was Big Angus Hutchison, bought I think the trophy cost about 3 shillings or something, and it was a silly wee golf trophy. And that really put the cat amongst the pigeons, because then the Open hadn't a look in. We had to get this stupid trophy. I never ever won it. Big Angus always won it, and I hate him.
Angus? Oh, great character. We're like brothers. Even as a boy, his father was at Douglas Head at Isle of Man, and my father was at Point of Ayr. Great singer. He pulled me up on the stage at one of these shows in Douglas Head. We got 2 and 6 each. I didn't do much of the singing. Angus did the singing.
That happened in the last year of the war. Now, Barrahead, the lighthouse is built at the top of the island of Bernera, which is 670 feet high. And I was called at 3 o'clock in the morning to take over my watch. The wind was probably storm force or above. And I went across the courtyard, and I found to my astonishment that the door into the tower was open. I couldn't understand this. However, I closed it and went in and started to climb the stairs. And as I went up, I got a strange feeling that something was wrong. And then I remembered that we had been informed that there was a German submarine supposed to be operating from the bay beneath the lighthouse. I thought nothing of it and pressed on, and then I got a strange, pungent smell. I couldn't understand this. And as I went slowly up the stairs, the smell got stronger and stronger. And I slowed down and held my hand out in front of me, and a little further up, I touched something that moved. And I got a real fright because I thought it was a German sailor with a bayonet ready to carve me up. I put my hand into the pocket of my greatcoat very slowly and pulled out a box of matches and struck a match. And there on the stairs in front of me was the biggest and hairiest billy goat I've ever seen.
One of the lads says to me, who follows you, Alan? I says, Kenny. Where is he? I says, he'll be in his having a lie down bed. If he's asleep, like, what way do you get him up? Well, I says, I'll just knock on the door and put the light on. And one of the other lads pipes up and says, no, he says, he opens the door and throws a tatty in, and Kenny dives out of bed on top of it, because Kenny is partial to a few potatoes, you know.
When I was at Skerryvore, Sandy Young was the cook, and he put out a pot of tatties and sat and gnash it there. And I said, God, there's a lot of tatties here, I better finish him. It's a big lad, Sandy. Didn't want to offend him. So I ate them. And the next day there's more tatties. And the next day there's more tatties. And I says, God almighty, I'll never eat all of them. Mind you, I did. And then come to the point at the end of the week, and I says, you'll hate to stop eating so much tatties, Sandy. Thank God, he says, we're on to the soup pot.
On the Muckle Flogger, we found a tailor's dummy. And at the time, we had engineers up from headquarters doing their annual inspection. There was only one toilet, one bathroom on the Flogger, and these gentlemen had monopolised this every morning. And the man up on watch first put the tailor's dummy in the toilet and carefully wedged the door open and left the light on. And we were delighted when we got up to see the 4 engineers all standing outside the bathroom with the towels, muttering, is he going to be in there all day?
There was what they call a wooden derrick or crane. This was lashed down with ropes. We were just going down to the landing, which was 100 feet below the crane, when this wall of water came round the corner, hit the bottom of the landing and rose over 200 feet of solid water up into the air, flooding this derrick. And if one of those seas hit them, you wouldn't see hide nor hair of them again.
Getting on and off Jahartich and Skerryvore was by derrick landing, so that the launch came in from the lighthouse tender, tied up to an anchor and some long ropes that came from the island in the sea, some maybe 10 yards from the edge of the grating landing, and then you were hoisted up on this derrick pole with the provisions and the men hauled in to the station. Because of the tide turning and the sea coming in, you only managed to maybe about half an hour or an hour at dead low water on spring tides to work on these gratings and with derrick landings. In my time, I think there was only once a loss of life on a grating, and that was at Skerryvore. With the old boat system, you could lose days, even weeks. I remember when one particular winter we were overstayed on the island of Copensay, and all the Orkney group at that time, which included Stroma, Sewell Skerry, Pentland Skerries. On the 4-week period that after we were out, we did a total of 19 days over and above our 28 days on the rock. And we were all airlifted out. And I think it was at that time that they saw the real potential for changing the crews on the lighthouses by the helicopter.
I think the lightkeepers hold a special place in the affection of the public. They certainly hold a special place in the affection of anyone who's concerned in the sea in any way, but for those of us who've actually been involved with them, these are special people. It marks the end of an era. This isn't the end of the lighthouse service in Scotland and the Isle of Man. It's purely the end of a chapter. Following the Brer disaster in 1993, a deep water shipping route has been established west of the Hebrides. That needs to be marked. So we're providing 3 lighthouses there. As the lighthouses are automated, of course, that isn't just the end of the interface with a human being, because our lighthouses, the vast majority of them, have an attendant. This is someone local, with local knowledge, who has access to the light, either by boat or by foot. At its height, the service employed approximately 300 lightkeepers, but from the summer of 1998, that will have been reduced to the 5 monitor centre attendants here in the Northern Lighthouse Board, monitoring the progress throughout Scotland and the Isle of Man with the aid of 2 PCs and quite a lot of high-tech equipment.
We met on the big set, 2182. Medium frequency, bouncing over water and skerries, little and muckle, drying and covering. Coastguards and keepers, testing propagation of hopeful radio. Butt of Lewis, Cape Wrath. Chumpenhead, Rooray. Illinglass, Usanish Point. High brick, stacked granite, salt-resistant cement, heated by the breath of our coastal companions. Muir, Lamont, McEachran. Where are you now?